Hey, Melody, welcome back. It's good to have you.
Hi, Bryan. Thank you for having me back. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're feeling better too. I know you were under the weather like a week ago, but
Yeah,
it's been going around. I mean, I had a flu as well. Man, I had a flu shot, so I feel like it could have been a lot worse.
it definitely could have been. I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, in what world do you get sick 7 times in the span from Christmas to Valentine's Day? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And I'm just like, I'm over it. I'm over it.
Yeah, yeah. It's time we canceled colds and flus. That'll make it go away. Yeah.
I 100% agree. I wish that we could do that. That would be fabulous.
I just do not. Yep, I don't consent to the flu, therefore it can't hurt me. I think that's how it
Yeah,
works. Yeah.
that sounds right.
Yeah. Nah, but we hope everybody's feeling well. I mean, like I said, it's flu season, cold season. Hope everyone is taking care of themselves, stocking up on chicken noodle soup, doing whatever they got to do. Um, I don't know about you, but like I was just joking with a friend of mine. He's another Vietnamese guy. And when we're growing up in a Vietnamese household, it's like there's this joke that there's like this oil. It's like really pungent, but it's like every Vietnamese parent's cure for everything. They just put on your nose, on your chest, and then I know Latinos, the equivalent is Vicks Vapor Rub, for example. But it's like this menthol kind of thing, and it is so freaking strong. But yeah, that's like what we use. Did you ever have any rituals like that growing up? Any weird stuff like that?
In my family, they would typically say hot honey, whiskey, and some black tea will clear you right up. I would agree with that as an adult and as a singer. Like that'll do your voice wonders.
Yeah,
But other than that, I have to agree with the Vicks. I mean, that's what we use in my house all the time now.
yeah, yeah. No, I still have like that green ointment or the green oil with the little picture of an eagle on it, man. And our Vietnamese listeners, I know it's one of those things where I say it and they can smell it right away. Their olfactory system is in full gear right now. Just like it's like for better or worse, they can smell it. And so, yeah, it doesn't smell good, by the way. It doesn't smell good, but yeah. And I know. So today's topic it was one I know you and I have been talking about for a while, and that is with Gen Z. Like we got to ask, right? Like we knew the World War II generation was what considered the greatest generation. That's what they're called. What do you think this generation? Great generation or greatest disappointment? You know, I mean, like offline, you and I were talking earlier about like MTV, and
Yep.
I always felt because I am like borderline Gen X, which and I'll happily grab that label. But our generation was one of the things we were most well known for was MTV, which back then was seen as like this, like if you got to be cool to get it, it's music, it's rap music, metal, rock, you name it. There was MTV News with Kurt Loder and Tabitha Soren. To a lesser degree, Carson Daly later with Total Request Live, but a lot of music and all that stuff. And then somewhere along the way, MTV isn't even known for music anymore, despite it being in the freaking name. And it's taken on other stuff, like other shows, like we're talking about was it Teen Mom and all that stuff. And I was like, it's not stuff my generation can relate to anymore. And it just definitely got me thinking about what is this generation going to be known for? You know what I mean? Like what are they really known for? And I think it's an interesting topic and one that you and I decided, yeah, let's talk about it. So what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think are like some pros and cons that this generation, Gen Z, will be known for once the history books are written?
I was actually just talking about this with a family friend the other night who's much, much older. Like, they're, I believe they would technically be the baby boomer generation, and they teach music. And so we were talking the other night about how kids and teens and young adults today, they can't do things like read cursive. They can't address an envelope. They can't make change, or they don't know okay, pick up the phone, right? Or like what it was like to have landlines or anything like that. And so it makes customer service jobs to an extent really, really difficult for them.
Yeah.
because those were things that they didn't need to learn. They didn't grow up in a time where those things were really important skills to have. Now they have different skills. They have technology skills that
Yeah.
a lot of us don't have. They're very tech savvy. So I think that that's really what they're going to be known for, is for their abilities with tech.
Yeah, you're right about that because I remember I posted something on my social media because I didn't want to believe it, but it said I think there was a study in the UK about how a lot of their kids can't read a clock. They can't tell time
Yeah.
on an analog clock. And I remember, heck, even when I was a kid, the generation that came after me, I noticed, what they couldn't do was padlock. Like gym class, we had to have a padlock, right? They didn't. A lot of them didn't know how to do it. And I mean, admittingly, yeah, it's not always intuitive, but you learn how to do it one time. At least my generation, you do it one time and then you figure it out. But I'd heard some people couldn't work padlocks, and they were stressing out about that. And I was like, huh. And then another example is driving stick shift. A lot of Gen Z can't drive a stick. And now, granted, some of that has to do with availability too, because I think stick used to be the norm, and it still is, like in Asian countries, for example. But here, a lot of different car transmissions have been very user friendly,
Yeah.
while still high performing. Because I know gearheads, because I contribute to another car podcast, Men in Cars, but like used to be automatic transmissions were inferior to stick shifts, but now no, they're not. They're really high performing. In fact, they'll shift faster than a human ever could. But incidentally, they're just easier than a stick. And so I agree with you about technology. They make a lot of things easier, but it has to be asked though. And as clinicians, I think we see it through a different lens. Is easier necessarily better? What do you think?
So personal thought here is no. Easier is not better, because there's a lot of skills that you don't get to learn. And there's skills that we end up having to teach in the therapy room, right? Problem solving, overcoming barriers, being able to look at the exceptions to different rules. When things are easy and you can chat GPT and answer to an online test, where are your critical thinking skills? Where's your recall? Where's your memorization? And those are things that are going to be necessities down the line. And I think that that's a problem that a lot of Gen Z individuals kind of fall into, is that they can't do those things, at least not as quickly. And then they have to learn it later. And
Yeah.
so that would bring up, like, is that a failure on our school systems?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, critical thinking and problem solving, if you can't do it, you're gonna experience a lot of anxiety from it, because now you dread having to try it again. And I think that is definitely going to be something that really, really is going to hurt this generation. But also, I mean, let me pull up the stats real quick. But like for Gen Z, and for the purposes of this episode, Gen Z we're defining as anyone born between 1997 and 2012. So if you're in that category, it's who we're talking about. 42%. 42% of Gen Z report feelings of depression or hopelessness. That is double the rate of prior generations. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean that is insane to me. Like the anxiety levels that they go through, whether some of the key drivers, for example, are social media, just pressure to succeed, economic uncertainty, I guess climate change. Thank you, Greta Thunberg. Societal instability, and just social justice, things like that. It's one of those things where there is a lot they're getting hit with. I mean, I know something you've mentioned in the past. COVID was another big one that really, really is a defining moment of this generation. And so, yeah, it's just they do have a lot coming at them. But let me ask you this. with this generation who is tech savvy, but also a generation that's defined by technological leaps that are like freaking exponential compared to when I was a kid. Okay. But that also pertains to our mental health field. There's so much access to mental health, so formal and informal. Like you can get therapy online through telehealth, but you can also, find videos on grounding skills, meditation, a lot of things that are aspects of what we do. Maybe not the whole thing, but you can access information, right? So, for a generation that has access to way more information and assistance than any generation before it, I have to ask, what do you think is contributing to that? So you have more solutions than ever, but you've also got more problems. So what do you think are some of the problems that are indicative of this Gen Z population?
When you say problems that are indicative, do we mean like outside factors or reasons why they're still experiencing so much
I say
depression and
both.
anxiety?
I say both.
Okay, thank you. So we talk about the increased access. Okay. Yes, there is increased access. Let's talk about how many people in that generation who actually know how to navigate their insurance or who have the money to pay for therapy services out of the pocket, even with a sliding scale, right? It's not incredibly affordable.
Yeah.
And then we have all of these different things online on social media where, yes, people are going through and they're talking about here's X, Y, and Z. Here's how you set boundaries. Here's how you engage in mindfulness. Here's how you do deep breathing or these different skills, grounding skills, coping techniques, communication skills. If so and so's not doing this, then kick them out, right? Problem is that not everything that you see on social media that we're calling accessible things is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I've had this bone to pick with social media for a really long time. Anybody can go on social media and just post and say, hey, here are things to do to better your mental health. Yes and no, because everybody's situations are different. It's like the term self-care, right? We know what self-care means. We know that it means looking at whole person wellness, doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, having time to ourselves, making sure that we're having a balance of going out with people and engaging in hobbies and completing household chores and tasks and what have you, right? There's a lot that goes into self-care.
Yeah.
When people talk about self-care on social media, do you know what they talk about? Go buy yourself that handbag.
Mm-hmm.
Go buy that new makeup.
Yeah.
That's self-care. Go have that treat. Go eat that ice cream.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point, and let me give you an example of like a variation of what you're talking about, but from a young man's perspective. So, a lot of young dudes right now, and I mean like Gen Z young men. I think the problem that they're going through right now, and we can cover the stats later, but like it's romantic relationships. Well, actually, not just romantic relationships, but like peer groups, being friends with other men. That's gone down. And in terms of the traditional sense, I mean, some of these guys, okay, if you ask them, they're gonna say they got lots of friends like online and all that. I'm not gonna minimize that, but for the purposes of this, I'm gonna talk about just having face to face, like a friend circle, relationships, and so I think one problem they run into is when they get dealt rejection a lot, they're going to tend to go online and then gravitate towards like-minded individuals. Now, the problem sometimes is when they attach themselves to the wrong group, whether you want to label it like the Andrew Tate type crowd, or like the black pill men's rights community crowd or whatever. But the thing is, my view on, like, I don't have a positive view of the black pill crowd. They just live in their problems. They don't really try to solve problems. But my attitude on like this, like the red pill Andrew Tate crowd is this. If you listen to what the man is saying in terms of self-improvement, okay, I can get behind some of that because I'm all for men trying to be better, succeed, be in better health, and just generally be happier in life. Now, the problem is at no point in that stuff do they talk about mental health, because that community tends to be like, you don't need mental health, you just need like stoicism, which is like pretty much like limiting that stuff, like your emotions and all that. You stay 100% rational, which, okay, if you're a philosopher or a logic person, perfect. But for the rest of us who aren't robots, we still have feelings and emotions, and we have to process things like rejection, grief. We have to process that. We're not automatons. And that is where I think that community falls by the wayside a bit, because it's easy just to say, well, be like me, right? Well,
Yep.
fair play to like Andrew Tate. He's 6'4", he's a good looking guy, he's athletic, he's got money. Fair play to him, you know. I'm all for men hitting their goals and all that. That's not what I'm complaining about at all. Not everybody's him. Okay.
Yep.
It's like, have you seen that? Have you seen that really funny Henry Cavill meme? The actor plays Superman, and like he's like super handsome, and then he says,
Yep.
like, just ask her out. It works for me. It's like, yeah. Well, Henry, you're 6 foot tall, no body fat, super handsome, right? Now, he didn't actually say that, by the way. It's just a meme. But most men are going to feel very, very inferior by the success of these larger than life male characters. But I can't help but feel if some of these guys took on more of this role of like, listen, this is what I did, but there's got to be a bridge between when you're a man who's hit rock bottom and isn't successful with your career, with women, with your friends. There has to be a processing period where you do get mental health support. You learn to process rejection, grief. You learn how to set goals. You learn to really take ownership so you can get that internal locus of control. Yep. They don't teach that. They just teach this idea that, well, if you're not there, it's because you don't want it enough, right? It's like those people that fucking peddle those pyramid schemes where it's just like, well, you don't want it enough. You know, you got to keep your eyes on the prize. Like, you got any more cliches for me, or do you have actual helpful tips, you see? And so I think that's something that young men, I can't speak for young ladies, but I definitely feel like young men encounter that, and then they get disappointed because there's like, I did everything these male gurus tell me, but I still haven't gotten 7 figures. I'm still like not where I want to be. I don't have all these women wanting to date me. What am I doing wrong? You know, I'm just weak. You're not weak. You're just not coping with it the right way. See? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I 100% agree. The younger males that I've seen in practice have experienced very similar things. And I think this is kind of part of where you and I have talked about social media and the detriment that it has on relationships and the detriment that it has on just our self-esteem, our emotions, a lot of our capabilities, right? And I think you see things very similarly with young ladies too, where there's that comparison to these people in social media and trying to be like, oh, well, I need to be like this person. I need to look like them. I need to act like them. I need to dress like them. I need to do all of these things like them. And the reality is that they're different people.
Yeah.
And the same things don't work across the board. And this is something that you and I were talking about earlier, is that if we're different people, we can't apply the same things.
No.
It's going to look different. Success is going to look different. And so if we're comparing ourselves to an ideal that isn't in line with something that's actually going to make us feel fulfilled with our life, and that doesn't actually meet a goal that we want, but we're still striving towards that, it's going to make us feel anxious. It's going to make us feel helpless and hopeless and defeated because we're not going towards the thing that's actually going to make us feel fulfilled. And I think I see that a lot with individuals who fall into that Gen Z generation.
Yeah.
Because that was the big rise of social media. I mean, millennials, right? I am in that millennial group. I will claim that. My older brother is too, even though he's 7 years older than me. And we both saw the rise of social media. We saw the rise of computers and technology and instant messenger and all of these things, where it just became really easy to see what other people were doing and compare yourself to that.
Let me ask you, because you bring up a really, really good point, and I always felt millennials, and I told you this earlier, a lot of responsibility on you to fix this generation is millennials are on paper the ideal group to mentor Gen Z and to teach them a better way out of their toxic habits and things like that. And they're the perfect generation. You guys are the perfect generation to help them to not pay attention to the noise, not get distracted by the negative factors. But like, let me ask you, because you bring up a good point about technology and how millennials, you guys were that first group to really take social media head on. And granted, it looked differently back then with MySpace, America Online, Messenger, Yahoo, ICQ, all that stuff. But what was it about you that got you to? Because I know you and I, we know each other. I know you're in a band. You've always been passionate about music. So, for example, what inspired you to stay with music as kind of like your default kind of escape in that sense versus going down that rabbit hole of social media?
I grew up in a music-centric family. My dad was a musician who worked with quite a few different bands. He worked in recording. He worked with Yamaha. He did a lot of different things. His is not a name that is well known, but if you ask any given person at like a trade show for music, who my dad was, they're going to know him. And so growing up with that music-centric thought, it just stayed. I mean, my name is Melody for a reason. Right? Melody, a musical melody. And so I took that on and I was like, you know what? That is something that is absolutely fabulous. And I started singing. I started out in choir and doing all of these things. And I've been singing since I was like 3. Yeah. I've been building computers since I was that young too. And so I enjoyed music. That was the thing that I ended up loving. Computers, I know how to do them equally as well. I don't love it. My brother ended up going down that route. And so I just went, here, you do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this fun part over here. You can do all of that. You're better at that than me. Right? And then, I mean, you know, my husband and I had the band together. And so in my young teenage years, which is when he and I met, we were about 15, he was playing guitar. I took on playing bass and singing, and we created this band. And so not only was it a way for me to connect with my dad and connect with a creative outlet that I really enjoyed, then it became a connection for my husband and I and the way that we got to do things. And we really wanted to go that way, period. And so it really came down to the connection that I was able to build with others, the friendship, the enjoyment, the emotional expression. And that's how I ended up more towards music than social media. I mean, even now, you and I follow each other on social media. How often do I even post?
Right.
How often am I on there? It's like never.
I think for a certain generation, it's almost simply used to stay in touch with people, right? Versus showing the entire internet what your day-to-day life is like. I think that's why, like, I have a private, you know, other than my business account, which, you know, people know how to link to it from here. Yeah, I have myself on private. I don't need the world knowing my business. It's almost like I don't want a lot of eyes on me, just the eyes that I give a shit about. Whereas I think, again, I'm discounting business accounts because you want eyes on that. It makes perfect sense. But I notice a lot of Gen Z people, they want their stuff accessed by strangers. They want to have hundreds of thousands of followers. They want people they've never met to tell them how beautiful they are, how skilled they are, how talented they are. They want to comment like on their shoes, you name it, right? But that gives them this validation that I think prior generations would have labeled as like artificial praise. Like, if someone who you don't even know them tells you, oh, you're so beautiful, or you're so this or that, you're just like, who are you and why should I care? But this generation's were like, these are my followers. These are my fans. I was like, fans? You're a fucking 11th grader. What the fuck are you talking about? You're fans? But that's just how they operate. You know what I mean? And but that's also what a lot of their self-esteem and confidence is tied to. And so I don't want to minimize that, but I also wonder, with the technology breakthroughs being what they are and their reliance on it, I mean, look at TikTok went down for like a day and people lost their marbles. So I just wonder, do we just accept it and we try as therapists, for example, to just look at it from the lens of, okay, we have to accept that it's here and we've got to teach them coping skills revolving around mental health? Or do we encourage them to try other things like play musical instruments, play sports, do hands-on things, cooking maybe? Because I think, remember, I'll use cooking as an example. Remember back in the day, you watch the cooking channel, right? Food Network, and you learn, you're like, I'm going to try that. Now, you could go on YouTube, you could go on some of these cooking apps, do the same thing. But I think that's a great thing, you know? And so I have to recognize that there are things that make that information that I used to be able to have to like go on TV and record something or TiVo it, to now I can just go on my phone and in 2 seconds I can download the whole recipe, print it out, and I'm good. And it's stuck on my refrigerator for 6 months. And then I still don't make it. But hopefully someday I will. But you see, it's just stuff like that. So at what point do we say that's good, but then the other part's bad? You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and that's, that is a really big thing that we have to juggle in the therapy room, right? Like you were saying. And everybody's approach to that is going to be different, right? I know that my approach to that is, okay, here are these things. How is this working for you, right? And a majority of the time when I ask my Gen Z clients, like, how is it working for you to get that external validation and build your self-esteem in that way? They go, oh, it feels empty. It doesn't actually fulfill me. And then I go, okay, so then let's go and explore these other things that can help build that internal motivation, that internal self-esteem. Because in all reality, we know in our generations, we found that was fake.
Yeah.
It didn't fulfill us in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not as fulfilling. If we're doing something on our own, and this comes back to the problem solving and the critical thinking and all of that, right? If we can do those things, if we can pick up our phone and we can find that recipe, and then we can go and make that recipe, here's the blending, right? Here's the technology. It's at our fingertips. And then here we are doing it.
Yeah.
And figuring out what we like in that. And if this is a beneficial pastime for us, and if this is something that we're going to be able to enjoy moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just even on another note, have you noticed the amount of Gen Z people that can't cook?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I see. The funny thing about it is sometimes I see them posting recipes. I see them, liking or whatever, sharing recipe things. And my assumption is, wow, you must be really freaking good at cooking. Oh no, I can't cook. It's just more of an admiration or almost this thing like, who wants to make this for me, right? But yeah, it's you're 100% dead on about that. And hey, let's correlate that with how many meal subscription services there are out there. And let's be real. It's not like they're all nutritious meals. Like they're not all fit meals. Let's be fair about that. Some of them are just marginally better than like a Stouffer's, like Hungry Man or dinner or something like that, right? It's just like barely. But yeah, I do worry about Gen Z's ability to just get things done with their bare hands, right? Like you said, cooking is an example of one. I look at like so many things that are hands-on that maybe in the past were maybe taught to you by a parent, like just, and I don't want to sound sexist, but I'm just gonna go back generations before, like it'll be like majority of the time, let's face it, your grandma or your mom probably taught you how to cook. Your father probably taught how to fix a car, how to do just basic, how to lift heavy shit and put it down. Okay. I don't know if that's still happening. But I would love to challenge parents today to be able to do, like you mentioned about, critical thinking skills. So it's like one thing that's in the news, right, is or on the news, but like people tend to do is they disseminate fake news. And
Yes.
sometimes it's not their fault. It's because the information they're receiving is faulty. So for example, I'll give you a couple examples. Is one is just you ever see video clips and it invokes this visceral reaction. You're upset because maybe something terrible happened. You're just like, damn, that guy's such a jerk. But then you stop and you're like, wait a minute. This was like a 30-second clip. What happened before that? Right? Did this person in this clip just wake up one day and decide, I'm gonna piss off the internet today? Or did something happen and I'm missing the context? Right? And so I think that is an example of something where it is meant to just make you feel really upset about something. But whether it's the truth or not as depicted, who's to say? But then on the flip side of that is, have you seen those animal videos lately where it always starts off something like it's always an AI generated voice, like this woman found a injured raccoon on the side of the road and nursed it back to health, and now the raccoon thinks she's its mother. And it shows all these like this footage, and it looks really cool, right? You're like, that is so sweet. But the problem is halfway in, you're just like, that's not even the same raccoon. In fact, that's not even the same girl. And then you realize, like, I don't think this is I don't think it's taken from the same story. I think it's just the AI was told to just create a feel good video based on all footage, right? And I think most media platforms let you kind of remix footage. I mean, YouTube will ask me about that. I always say allow. I won't even lie to you, Melody. I don't even know what the fuck that does, but I assume people can take our clips. I mean, as long as we get credit for it. But that's what I mean. You could just create something, right? It's like there's this ongoing meme of like this guy with his pet husky, and then it shows like the husky's all happy, but then it shows when the guy's got a girlfriend, and the husky's all angry looking, and everybody loves it. But as a former husky owner, I'm just like, am I the only one that notices that's not the same dog? Like the patterns in the skin, the fur is not the same. I'm like, but then if I didn't mention it, people just say like, no, it's the same. I'm like, it's clearly not the same dog. It's the same guy. It's not the same dog. And then there's like, well, you don't have a sense of humor. I'm like, well, people who know me know I have a very good sense of humor. I'm just asking questions here. I'm just like, it's like, what's more important, I guess, it not being accurate or it made you laugh? You know what I mean? Or it made you feel good. Like the animal stories, like I said, like if the goal is just to make people feel better, okay, that's cool. But is it really feeling better if it was based on a lie? You know what I mean? So that's my thing. And what irks me about that is you don't need to create false content. If you want examples of animal videos that are super 100% honest and equally as cute and inspiring, subscribe to that YouTube channel, The Dodo. They have really awesome videos, feel good ones that are like they're submitted by the user, and you could tell it's the same person, it's the same animal, but those are real. So if that stuff is out there, why make something up? You know what I'm saying? Why make it up? And I understand some people are just to say, dude, just shut up. It makes us feel happy. Right. But there's no need to do that when the real thing exists, is what I'm saying. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why lie when the truth will do? Is basically an old mentor of mine. That was like his trademark line. I love it. Why lie when the truth will do? And that's what I ask. It's like, but again, it's an artificial experience, you know? And then like a lot of stuff is AI generated imagery, which we use AI generated imagery. In fact, I'm probably going to add one right here. But it's not real. And some people are like, no, it's real. It's real. Like celebrity pictures. And I'm like, did you not notice the celebrity's got 6 fingers on her hand? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then by then, people are just like, the world is shattered when they realize it's not real. And I worry about that. I really, really worry about people's ability to just be like, I guess I was wrong. But some people can't deal with it well. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about, but I also want to ask you this. Do you think social media alone, just on its own, is the greatest contributor to Gen Z's anxiety?
I think that it is the greatest. I think that it is one of the greatest.
Yeah.
I think that there are still things like we talked about it before, pandemic and the shutdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, I'll continue with this train of thought is the pandemic and the shutdown increased a lot of people's anxiety, right? Anxiety about going out, about possibly getting sick, possibly being around other people. Oh no, what could happen? Because also you've got to think there were the riots during those times, right? Where people in California were breaking into places and breaking stuff and stealing stuff and all, right? All kinds of things like that. So of
Mm-hmm.
course that's going to increase our anxiety just about life. I apologize for him. He doesn't want to sit down. Right, but also the social anxiety that came about.
Yep.
The difficulty socializing, the difficulty talking to people about even wanting to go into those social situations. And then I guess we could say, from there, social media reinforced that because then you had this online presence. You didn't have to go out. You didn't have to do these things. You could sit in that social anxiety for face-to-face interactions. You could sit in anxiety, period,
Mm-hmm.
and compare yourself to things on social media and just interact with people on there.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe, yeah, I just talked myself into, yeah, social media might be one of the biggest.
I think indirectly in some ways, because I'll give you an example as well. That social media is involved in, but not 100% the culprit is. I think there's a lot of people in Gen Z that feel there's this crippling expectation of them by previous generations to have qualities like grit, critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, charisma, like ability to attract the opposite sex, because the number of people that are reported being single, for this generation, it's pretty drastic compared to past generations, certainly Gen X and millennials as well, and so I think they're being judged very harshly by another standard. See?
Yeah.
And so I think that could be crushing because, yeah, you can say okay boomer a million times, but at some point you're going to feel very, very hurt by them expecting you to be better. And
Yeah.
I mean, professional athletes, especially basketball players, are feeling this from the old heads, because they're not just feeling it from the old heads, they're feeling it from the fans. There's this criticism that, like, for example, that once LeBron James retires, there's nobody left to be like the guy, the face of the league, right? And some of these guys, like Anthony Edwards, I think he just flat out said, I don't want to be the face of the league. It's like, here you are, you're a great basketball player, but you're just flat out saying, I don't want to be the face, because you don't want that pressure, And you can put any spin you want on it, but heavy lies the crown, right? And when you're told, you as this new generation, you're never going to be as tough as the previous generation. You're never going to be as celebrated and idealized, like as the Michael Jordans, the Magic Johnsons, Larry Birds, right? Kareem.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very hurtful, because you're going to feel like, well, shit, man, what can I do to live up to that? The truth is, you can't do anything. You can't. And that's the tragedy of it. And it's hard to deal with, not being able to meet this expectation that is impossible to meet. Okay? Because let's just say the thing that just happened recently was the NBA All-Star game. Like, so they tried. Like Steph Curry and them, they tried to play harder, but we're talking about tried harder than like the NBA post Kobe Bryant, because Kobe might have been the last superstar that played hard in the All-Star game. But it's like this agreement amongst the star players that, listen, Melody, we're not going to play hard because none of us want to get hurt, but we want to collect our money. We want our endorsement deals to be happy, all that. So if you're the one player who's like, fuck this, I'm going to play defense, now all the other players hate you. People are like, why'd you make us all look bad, man? You know? But then the argument can be made if you're a fan, you're like, we need that one guy to play hard because maybe he'll force the others to play hard again, right? And maybe we'll get rivalries again because these players don't hate each other. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but like, imagine though, I would challenge a player to be like, fuck this. I'm going to play defense. I'm going to dunk in these guys' faces. And if they hate me, fuck it. It's actually going to bring back competitive play, right? Like, Larry Bird did not give a shit who liked him back in the day. The Pistons did not care who liked them. You came into the paint, they would put you on the ground, right? Dennis Rodman definitely didn't care who liked him. Charles Barkley, he had like one friend, that was Michael Jordan. And so it's maybe that's not a bad thing. But yeah, this crippling expectation, the expectation of men to be like with a woman at this certain age and be married by this certain time or have kids. Couples are delaying having kids. That's if they're lucky enough to meet in the first place, right? And so I think a lot of them are abandoning this societal expectation, this norm that they be judged by like the relationship status. And I know you and I, and I'll add the link to our previous episode about modern dating. You and I went on a deep dive about that, the expectations. So we don't have to rehash it all that, but they're heavy. Those are heavy things for both men and women. I don't want to just make it sound like men are the only ones that are struggling with pair bonding and all that. But it's a big deal. And when you constantly have this generation pointing and laughing at you, saying you're the sexless generation and all that, I get it. That's tough. And sometimes, I mean, we wonder why these guys finally just lose it and they just go on a shooting spree, these incels, right?
Yeah.
Because it's at some point you gotta say enough is enough. We got our laughs in, just lay off them. Because in the 90s, we just called that bullying, right?
Yeah.
Just bully somebody into that, right? And so it's like, okay, just stop. I mean, but yeah, some people, they just, it's a struggle, man. Especially, let's say if you have a parent that, let's say you're a son and you didn't really inherit your father's like charisma, his looks or whatever, right? But that same dad is going to hold you to this standard, like, why can't you be like me? I used to be this. I played high school football. You didn't. I met your mom when I was 17 and then we got married later. How come you haven't met anybody? That could be crippling to a kid's self-esteem, right? Yeah. But if that dad was just like, son, what do you like to do? What are things you like to do? What can I teach you? Like, what do you want to learn from me? Just teaching them hands-on skills to give them confidence, right? Because listen, I think we've talked about this before about like confidence in a man, real confidence. Hey, no woman is going to be like confidence is a bad thing. Now, arrogance bad, confidence, no. What's wrong with a dad or a mentor teaching a young man to have confidence, right? Mm-hmm. But instead, I think a lot of people do the opposite. They undermine the confidence of some of these young people. And as fun as it is to joke about, and I do that more than most, I won't even lie, because I know we talked offline about Gen Z's ability to hold a job. It's bad. It's bad. And as someone who's interviewed Gen Z, I can honestly say they've been some of the worst interviews I've ever had, but they've also been some of the best interviews I've had, because the best of them knocked it out of the park, completely knocked it out of the park. I mean, I remember, you and your husband did me a solid years back when you performed at an event that I put together. And there were a lot of young people there that they have my respect. They really were dealt a shit hand in life. And I know that really is something that hits close to you. I know you like working with that population too, and like, but there amongst them, there are some that are really good and they've got all the attributes that the prior generations had. They just didn't have the coaching, the abilities readily available to them, but they still manage to do really well. And I always tell them, when I see some of that generation, I always just tell them, like, dude, you are extraordinary. Like you've had to deal with a lot of shit and you've really come out on top. I got to give you your kudos on that. Without buttering them up too much, where now they're just like, they stop working hard. But yeah, like I said, I've seen the worst, but I've also seen some of the best interviews were with Gen Z. And so, yeah, and that's just been that's just been my experience, but yeah, I just, those crippling expectations, man, those are, I used to joke that Asians, our mom's expectations were hard for us, which they are. But I think that's one person. When you have society, including the internet, telling you what a bunch of bums you are,
yep.
I mean, that's rough, man. Telling you you're never going to be as good as the last generations before you and all that. And your defining features were laziness, social media, and COVID. Man, that's rough, man. And I hope that, like, we talked about, there's so much assistance online with mental health access, ability to just even get informal services in place, right? Like, I have a meditation app. We might have been introduced to that in grad school at Buddhify.
Yep.
Our mutual professor, I think, introduced us to that. I still use that to this day, and I recommend that for my clients. And we're not getting a kickback from people, but if you want, we'll leave a link in this episode as well. I use that, and it's contextual. It's like, if you're at work, it has the ones for like the meditations for when you're at work and you're tired or you can't get any sleep, whatever. I love it. I use that, and it'll shut off on its own. So you don't have to worry about it. You don't worry about it going too long or whatever, if you're like trying to fall asleep. And this is the tech savvy generation, like you pointed out, and I hope they utilize it, but I hope they can also see the benefit of like just going to therapy, like in person. Like, they go to your office, to my office, and they meet with us in person, so they can read body language. They can see like what it's like to be in the presence of another person instead of through a monitor. I think that would help.
Yeah, it definitely would. It would normalize the whole process and decrease the anxiety about meeting other people in person. The other app that's really good, and I know that I have a lot of Kaiser clients.
Yep.
Kaiser will give you free access to the Calm app as long as you have their insurance. So anybody who's watching this who has Kaiser, you can download the Calm app for free.
Yeah. And must give a shout out to our colleagues that work for Kaiser and are still on strike. Good luck. It's been, 3 months, maybe? I don't know. But
I think we're in month 4. October, November, December.
Ooh.
Oh, we're in month 5.
Wow. Best of luck to all of our brothers and sisters and everybody in between. That's rough, man. I don't know if Kaiser's giving an inch, but yeah, I don't know. But they're a resilient bunch, our colleagues, and so hopefully they'll come out better, with better terms.
Fingers crossed. And to backtrack into what we were saying is, the weight of those expectations, that's crippling. That's gonna make us feel hopeless and helpless, and like we can't do anything, like we can't perform, like we're never going to amount to what everybody else thinks that we need to amount to. And the thing is, and I think each of our generations have had to deal with varying degrees of that. But Gen Z is definitely getting the worst of it right now.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
They're in that period where it is bad. It is bad. And one day, they're going to learn to be the don't give a fuck generation like the rest of us did. Hey,
something I said in an unaired episode. Well, no, aired for about a week before I had to take it down. Not for anything bad, but my old co-host, asked, "Well, what are your advice for a situation like that?" And I just say, if it's something I can't control, 3 words. So fucking what? SFW. What am I going to do? I can't control that. And I've had colleagues in the past, because I won't lie, I'm a bit of a control freak, but I've had colleagues in the past, millennials, I'll give it to the millennials for this one. I used to fret about stuff outside my control because I was worried about how I was perceived, my professionalism. And they would say, why do you care so much? If someone hates you, they're going to hate you. I mean, they made that determination already. No matter how much evidence you show them to the contrary, they're still going to dislike you. People are still going to think a certain way. Why do you give a shit so much? And I thought about it. And well, first I was like, how dare you? But then I was like, nah, they're making a lot of sense. And I always give credit where credit's due, because these people, once I come to this epiphany, I always call them or text them and say, hey, remember that talk we had? They probably don't. I'm just like, I realize you are right and I appreciate it, and so, yeah. But, something similar to what we're talking about the expectations that society has of this generation. On the flip side of that, one thing that also seems to be a defining quality of them is that this generation seems to be associated with, it's like this desire to fix the world's problems, political, environmental, you name it, right? I think there's this idea that the boomers fucked up the planet, and then this Gen Z's got to fix it, okay? Do you think that self-imposed expectation is also crippling?
Oh, yeah. It definitely is. Because then you're saying, well, somebody else fucked this up and now I've got to clean up the mess.
Mm-hmm.
How come theoretically, yes, as politics go, the upcoming generations are going to be the people who are going to advocate for change and things like that. Yes. But also, how come it has to be all on you?
Yeah.
There are other generations. There's millennials. There's Gen X. There's the baby boomers are still out there. Like, it's not all on them. It's not all on Gen Z.
Yeah.
We're all equally, I'm going to say this very unprofessionally, we are all equally fucked here.
Yeah.
Like, honestly. And we all got ourselves into this fucking mess.
Yeah.
It's not just their...
I used to joke about this to a buddy of mine. I think I say this on another podcast, but like, I talked about when I was a child, right? One thing that never sat well with me about the Superman origin story was, I was like, man, we have this civilization, this alien civilization that is so much more advanced than us, but they fucking literally dug to the core of their own planet, fucked it all up, and despite the fact that they had millennium before that, they had space exploration, they actually like colonized other planets, but somehow they're like, oh, let's keep fucking up our own planet. Oh no, it's going to explode, right? And we have absolutely no backup plan except one tiny spaceship for an infant, okay? I was like, that could never happen. Fast forward a few decades, as an old person, I'm just like, yeah, I think my generation would have totally dug to the Earth's core, fucked up the planet, and then too late, we'd realize, yeah, we're fucked. Let's send this one little fucking kid out to Mars, we would totally do it. we would totally do it. I have to acknowledge, yeah, we're guilty. DC Comics in the 40s must have saw the future, because we would totally do it. Now, this generation, I don't think they would. However, my concern is, and my challenge really is, what are you going to do better? Like, and don't tell me fucking electric cars, because that's not the answer. I mean, I'm going to die on that hill. Electric cars are not the answer. Okay. You need something more, something that doesn't destroy the environment in the creation of it. Yeah, once you get the car, it burns clean. Creating it does irreparable harm. But anywho, show me what you got. You know what I mean? I would love in my lifetime to hear about some young person who is just like, enough talk. I'm just going to create something better. And if we can get, and look, I know it's like, it's the season to hate on billionaires and super rich people. But if you can get just one billionaire to be like, that is a freaking great idea, and I want to attach myself to it. Now you've got a movement. Okay.
Yep.
I'm tired of seeing all this shit in the news about like kid creates some compound that like eats non-biodegradable waste. I'm like, perfect. But then I never hear about it again. I'm like, did this kid get silenced or what happened? Or like you hear about people coming up, like young kids, like who are accomplishing amazing. They're not even Gen Z. I think they'd be the Gen Alpha or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I hope a Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk or somebody, you know, a banking institution that is willing to like take a private equity stake, something like that to help with this kid's vision, right? That would be amazing to me. And I have faith that like someone's going to rise, right? Someone's going to be a superstar and they're going to be remembered. And I hope that happens in my lifetime. I hope someone comes up with some solution that lobbyists and all that don't like shoot down because it hurts their bottom line. Because listen, I'm 100% capitalist through and through. My family escaped communism. I'm never gonna root for communism. But I also get the downside of capitalism is if you're heavily invested in your portfolio into, let's say, fossil fuels, you're gonna poo-poo on everything else, right? Unless those same investors also double dip and go into like hydrogen power or something like that. I get it, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. Okay, I just recognize that's a drawback of the free market economy. But man, I would love in our lifetime to see something like that, because using the NBA analogy again, man, I want there to be the next Michael Jordan. I want there to be a great, phenomenal player that is above all the noise, doesn't fall victim to the Gen Z trappings that fans are so quick to criticize them for. And then we talk about them like, I got to have that guy's shoes. I got to get his jersey. And he don't even play for my city. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, my opinion, the closest guy I can think of is Steph Curry. I'm never going to say anything bad about Steph Curry. But he's one guy, you know? He's one guy because I think he represents a lot because he's not like a huge guy, right? He's a guard. Michael Jordan was a guard. But I hope there are those outliers that can set the standard. But it's going to be tough.
Let me ask you this, though. Keeping on this basketball area, could there not be somebody in the WNBA that could be that person?
I see where you're going with this. Yeah, I 100% agree. Because Caitlin Clark mania is insane. I love it. I love it. And listen, I consider myself to have somewhat of a biased opinion because I went to like a WNBA game literally the first season it came out. And I went in 97 to the LA Sparks game. And let me say this is why I know Caitlin Clark mania is real and should be harnessed. Because back then, people don't understand. They make a joke and a mockery about the WNBA right now because of what it's been for the last couple of decades. Nobody watching this fucking episode that was around in the 90s, that lived in LA, and can remember this, can deny. Lisa Leslie and the LA Sparks were fucking huge. She was like super tall. Like she was just as tall. I think she might have been taller than Jordan, you know?
Yeah.
She played center. Phenomenal defensive player. And she could get buckets, you know, for someone her height. She wasn't a bad shooter, but she played, you know, under the rim. And to me, she was synonymous with the WNBA. Now, granted, some of that was location bias. I lived most of my life in California, so of course, home team. And I remember her, and I was like, it's her that she's playing against. She's like totally outclassing these other girls. So she really stood out. Lisa Leslie, she had like the LA Lakers would be attending the games in full support.
Yeah.
But then somewhere in between, the media stopped supporting the WNBA. Somewhere in between. Now, granted, admittedly, the skill level wasn't what it is today. There were players like her that I think would be good in any decade. You put prime Lisa Leslie on the court today, and you give her some reps, she's going to be a starter every fucking year. Okay, but there are certain players that are transcendent, I think. And she was one of them. So WNBA was a phenomenon, but somewhere along the way it fell off. Whether it's because of broadcast stations, whatever, I'm not really sure. Okay, because when I went, it wasn't an empty stadium, and I got back into watching. I got into women's basketball again because I was so disappointed with men's basketball. So the year before Caitlin Clark made it in the league, I started watching the Las Vegas Aces because my favorite player is Kelsey Plum. Well, because she's a UW Husky, and I graduated from University of Washington. So she happens to be a phenomenal point guard, and then she is with LA now. She got traded after she got 2 rings. She got traded to LA, so I can start rooting for the Sparks over the Aces again. But I agree with you. Caitlin Clark is, I think, she's the one that reignited that WNBA, the female basketball explosion. Okay, and I love Kelsey Plum because she was one of the first ones that wasn't a hater because it was her record. It was her college record that Caitlin Clark broke, the scoring record. See? And she was like all for it. She was all for it. She's like, yeah, because they played the same position. See? And so, but the public, unfortunately, I think this is like this toxic male crowd. They started to pick up on like, oh, these girls hate Caitlin Clark, but they didn't focus on the ones that were like, I'm glad she's here. She's going to help the rest of us elevate the game, Yep. And so, yeah, I do. You are 100% right. I think they call it the Caitlin Clark effect. And there's some other girls in college right now that are going to also, I think, help elevate the sport. I love it. I look forward to it. And but I also recognize there's going to be a toxic fan base that's just going to be like, oh, these girls suck, and they're going to show all the bloopers. And actually, something like that happened. Someone brought that up, and I said every sport has their bloopers. In fact, every Thursday, Shaq on Inside the NBA literally has like that Shaq and a Fool, where it's like the worst 5 plays. I was like, that's literally what you guys are talking about. But he does this every week.
Every week.
You compile entire seasons to put a blooper reel together. He's just showing 1 week, Yeah. And that's only the worst of the worst. That's not all the bad plays, just the worst ones.
Worst of the worst. Yeah.
You get highlight reels of like the marquee players. They don't fuck up in the WNBA.
Yeah.
Asia Wilson, they don't fuck up. My girl Kelsey Plum her 3-point shooting percentage is insane, And so I'm just like, no, these girls play hard. They play team basketball, and I love it. It reminds me of like the Jazz back in the day, the Bulls, the triangle offense, the pick and roll. They play team ball. They spread the ball around. They don't do these ridiculous contested threes and all that. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm 100% with you. I got to put in my order for my Kelsey Plum jersey.
Do it. But see, to tie this into what you were talking about previously, is there are those people who are creating things, right? But that there isn't investment into them. There isn't media of them. The same thing happens in the WNBA.
Yeah.
Very well, that next upcoming Michael Jordan could be female, and she could be in the WNBA. She could be in college right now. We don't know. We don't know because it's not broadcasted.
Yeah. I'll say this though, Melody. I think the tide is turning though. Did you know Nike, like their shoes, One of the better selling shoes is actually that girl Sabrina. Sabrina Ionescu. I think I'm saying her name right.
Yep.
The one that did that 3-point shootout with Steph Curry, which was really close. That was close. Her shoes are like I'm not sure if it's the same designer, but like they seem, most basketball fans acknowledge that Sabrina's shoes are like the spiritual successor to the Kobe Bryant's, because the low tops, similar design, but they're affordable. They're very affordable, and those are, you see dudes wearing that a lot.
Oh yeah,
you see a lot of men wearing them, and I mean, I know Angel Reese has her own shoe with Reebok. She literally, Shaq and Allen Iverson tapped her to basically be the athlete that they rebooted the basketball brand, so they're making basketball shoes again. So she's the first one. So not a guy, it's her. That's Angel Reese is getting the first Reebok signature in like 20, 30 years. That's amazing. And so I think the fact that some of these dudes are just like, no, I'm going to get the Sabrinas, right? Versus like the Giannis's, or even the Kevin Durant's and all that. That is amazing to me. And the fact that you got dudes like me, and trust me, people who know me definitely would never have accused me of being like, like this big like supporter of like women, this and that, because I could be kind of a pig, but I'm here talking about like, dude, I want to get like a Kelsey Plum jersey, I when the day comes and like Caitlin Clark has her signature shoe, I'll take a look at it. And the fact you got little fucking boys now saying like, oh, I want like the Caitlin Clark jerseys. I want this, That's why, like, was it like out there, like, was it Tyrese Halliburton making a joke about how like he's always the one that has to take a picture for the fans with Caitlin Clark or something like that, because they don't know who he is, and he's part of the fucking Pacers. That's beautiful. But it also shows that there's this recognition that, like, yes, it took this college girl to come along and just really, really raise the bar for all the other women, the pay, the travel, and all that. And I also think the fans, I think had a say in that, where they're just like, you can't keep manufacturing players. We're gonna tell you who we like, because the NBA's been doing that for 20 years, right? Ever since Jordan left. I mean, Kobe was 100% the guy, and then it was LeBron. But they've been on this quest to try to create the next guy. They've been unsuccessful for one reason: it's not organic. You don't get to tell us who the guy is. You don't get to tell us who the girl is. The fans decide that. They decided Caitlin Clark is our girl. Steph Curry, LeBron, Kevin Durant, they're like our guys. But after that, after those big three are gone, it's up in the air, right? What's the NBA going to do? Fucking clone Michael Jordan? So yeah. So give it time.
But with all that being said, I mean, it depends on how much people are set up for success, right? How much different situations are set up for success. Tying this back into Gen Z, because I know that we went a little over there, is I don't feel like they've been set up for success.
I don't think so. And I was going to ask, like, what do you think? What is your outlook? What's your outlook for them, given that they're not set up for that success?
We both know that I try to be realistic, right? While kind of teetering the optimistic side. I would like to think that, because you had made mention that millennials, we are the people who can provide that guidance for Gen Z. And yes,
all on you, Melody.
Hey, don't put that on me. I can't do all that work on my own.
Us old heads, hey.
The rest of my generation needs to get their shit together too, okay? With guidance, with teaching, with openness to learning, there's a possibility, right? But even that comes down to they can't do it on their own, just like the rest of us couldn't do it on our own. Your generation couldn't do it on your own. The baby boomers couldn't do it on their own.
We can't do it on our own. We just pretend that we did.
Yeah. I think every generation likes to think that we all did something on our own, but the reality of the situation is none of us did jack shit on our own.
Correct.
Right? My overall outlook is that there's possibilities. It's possible. Do I think it's probable? Ask me that in another 10 years. But it's possible.
Yeah.
The right guidance, the right support, the right openness, willingness.
Something you just said that I want to jump on right away is you said about guidance. So this is my old head advice to Gen Z. I benefited from having some very good mentors in my life. And I always try to give credit to them. It could be something as little as seemingly insignificant as like a turn of phrase that they used to always say that I completely stole. It could be a belief system that they instilled on me by challenging my current beliefs, or it could be a challenge for me to be better, right?
Yeah.
And I got a lot out of them, but I always respected these men and women that gave me a piece of their grit, gave me a piece of their resilience, their wisdom, their problem-solving skills when I thought I might have had all the answers. And they proved to me that I didn't. But I also was someone that, man, I loved hearing old war stories, so to speak. I loved hearing how they did it back in their day. I like the context, and I like to see what's still applicable. Now, I am not sure that would work with today's generation, but just not in the way it was given to me, the way that information, that advice, that mentorship was given to me. And I would say that's the thing. Okay, I think the theory works. I just want to know, how can millennials be that to this generation in a way that this generation will embrace? Okay, that is, to me, that's the challenge. Maybe it's someone creating content on YouTube, right? And so that way the Gen Z person is finding it and deciding whether they want to be under this person's wing, at least online anyway, versus like meeting them in person. Because I know meeting people in person is harder for this generation. I understand that. But can they take the spirit of what I felt helped me to succeed in life? Can they take the spirit of it and get mentorship elsewhere? You know, like I have a nephew. He played football in high school, and he plays intramurals and all that in college right now. He was never a big guy. He's very undersized for the cornerback and safety position, but he had heart. He wanted to play really hard. And the player he tried to emulate his game after was Richard Sherman, who's also my favorite athlete. Well, my nephew is about 5'5". Richard Sherman's 6'3". And so he had a, but he tried to take what he could. He would look at Sherman's like mental game, how he would do that. He would take his route running ability, do all that, and he would try to take from it. But he's never met the guy. You know, it's just he idolized him. He got his sports gear, follows him on social media, watches his tape to see how he dissects plays. You know, every interview he watches it, listens to his podcast. He would do that so he could take whatever he could, knowing he would never be as good as Richard Sherman, but if he could take from that, take his best skills and apply it to his own skill set, his own limitations, I suppose, then he's still a winner, right? Because he did everything he could. So that's the thing. Maybe that's the key. It's like having this mentorship from a distance, you know? I don't know. That's just something the only thing I could think of. I just know what mentorship did for me. And I've tried my best to mentor people in my day. I mean, now I don't know. I feel like I'm too old. I'm too old and I'm too worn out, even though I'm younger than most of my old mentors were when they met me. But I also don't get to assign myself that. Someone has to determine that I mentored them. For all I know, maybe people I think I mentored, they're just like, hey, I just listened to this guy, so maybe he'd shut the fuck up. I don't know. It's not up to me to say. But like, I just know how it helped me. And I mean, I'd like to think on some level I've helped some people, but either way, they chose me. I don't get to choose myself. Like, Melody, I'm going to mentor you today. It doesn't work that way, right? Like, I can't tell you, like, I can't come up with some identity and assign it to myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my outlook. Is you find someone that has the skills you want and the results that you aspire for, and maybe that's the ticket. But somewhere along the way, you take those positive traits and you apply it in a way that's unique to your own identity. I think is the best way for me to really think about it.
Yeah. I think that brings the call out there then to parents, to individuals who are of my generation and your generation. Look, I know we're tired. I get it. But we have to be open and willing to fill those shoes and be flexible enough to learn the ways that other people will learn best and will take our feedback best.
Yeah. I hope therapy clients out there aren't shy and aren't afraid to ask clinicians like Melody and I, like, what are some things I can do better as a parent to help my child not have these same trappings, right? Because, I mean, some things off the top of my head that I would suggest is read to them, like a story time before they go to bed. Play sports with them. Engage them in activities where you give them instructions so they get used to being confronted with solutions, not just like, I think examples we've given in the past are things like giving them directives. Like, for example, if a kid is running too fast, instead of saying, hey, don't run, it's like, hey, son, I need you to slow down. Okay, slow down and be more careful. That's a directive, because how do you not do something? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's so be directive, teach them those problem solving skills, but do it in a nurturing way instead of like making them scared to want to talk to you. And I think that's a start. Is it easy? Hell no. Because for all of that you're doing, you got all of social media telling them, oh no, fuck all that. Be an entrepreneur or be a TikToker or whatever. It's like, okay. Because you got a whole generation that wants to be entrepreneurs now, but they don't really know what that is. Right? They all want to be independent contractors, but it's like it's like saying, Melody, I want to do what you do, but I don't want to have a boss. I don't want you to give me a caseload, but I really want your pay and I really, really want your medical benefits. It's like, it does not work that way.
Change starts in the family.
Agreed.
I'll say change starts in the family. Mm-hmm. If we see changes in the ways that parents or older siblings or aunts and uncles are doing things with kids, then we'll see that change in those generations that we want to see. Listening to them, engaging them in those problem-solving skills. Let them fail. And don't blame teachers for their failures.
Yes.
Let your kids learn what it is like to fail and what it is like to problem solve, to do things differently. Yeah. We learn from failing. We don't learn from being told exactly what to do.
Yes. And I think teachers, you bring up a great point. They're some of the more underappreciated people, professionals out there. They get blamed when your kids fail a test. They get blamed when your kid gets suspended. But it's like, if we're not going to teach our kids accountability, and if we don't take accountability for parenting, you know, I told you offline how for the last week, the city of LA They were nice enough to invite me to attend a week-long LAPD mental health intervention program.
Yeah.
And I went, met a lot of great officers. Those trainers there were really, really great. We had a lot of different people. And so I definitely want to give them their flowers. And I see the police are trying to make a huge, huge effort to try to do better community mental health policing, their policies, and I'm glad I went there. I hope more people in the mental health field get invited to attend these as consultants and whatnot. But also, you talk about parenting. Listen, don't scapegoat all police officers and say they're just out to get you. They're not the ones that put a gun in your hand. They're not the ones that make you go 25 miles over the speed limit in a school zone. Am I going to say they're all perfect? No. But are the majority that I've met on the level? Yes. The cops I was in the training with, I liked them. The training officers were really, really amazing people. And so they're not actively going out there to fuck up your day. Well, maybe the meter maids, but that's something different. Nobody likes them. But the majority of cops genuinely trying to do the right thing. But so don't get me wrong. They're nervous too when they pull you over for a traffic stop. They're nervous too because they don't know what you're packing. So I would encourage people look, I know it's fashionable right now to be hate the police, defund police, all this stuff. I get it. And especially for someone who's suffered legitimately at the hands of law enforcement, I understand. Yeah. But you got to ask yourself, what is the end game? Just like education, you can be mad at teachers. What is your end game? Is it you want the world to be better, or do you want the world to be just as hurt as you? You got to pick which one you want, right?
Yeah.
So if you felt wronged, is your quest to make Melody, Bryan, and the rest of the world feel that injustice, or is it I'm going to make sure this shit doesn't happen again? For the next person. So I'm thinking beyond my own pain in this. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And one last thing I'll just end on, and I just real quick, Melly, do you have any experience working with NAMI?
I do, yes. I used to volunteer with NAMI in before grad school and in grad school. Yeah.
Yeah, for people who don't know, and we'll leave a link on the bottom too for NAMI, is they have lots of programs that don't cost a dime. Okay, for people that are going through mental health challenges, or people who are family members, for example, of people that have had mental health challenges. They have a lot of good representatives out there, and I would strongly suggest if you want to help, but you're just not sure how, hit them up. Hit them up. Because we had a couple of NAMI presenters and participants, actually, that were really cool to share their story. And I love the fact that they're trying to make the world of mental health a better place for people, so that those people don't have to go through what they went through, versus some people, like we've mentioned, that they want others to go through what they went through. They're like, no, my pain will be your pain. These people are like, my pain was so unbearable, I don't want others to go through it. And so I'm trying to tell my story. I'm trying to implement change. I love it. I commend those people. I wish more people had that mentality of this attitude of, I'm going to share my story so you can understand and empathize how hard it was without actually going through the hurt that I did. So it's like, I want you to be as tough as me. I know it's going to be harder because you didn't go through exactly, but I want you to know what it's like. I'm going to tell my story unfiltered, uncensored, and sometimes not safe for work, but it needs to be told. Yeah.
And it's like, learn from my experiences so that you don't have to go through them.
And there's a way, what you said, Melody, there's a way for how parents can do that too. Parents got to stop this notion they got to censor their shit. Like, kids aren't that stupid, especially when you're in high school. You just tell your truth, man, to your kids. You tell them how hard high school was, right? I'll tell. I used to tell my nephew, like, dude, being Asian in the 90s, man, with all the gangbanging going around, the shootings that happened, people thought we were all either super smart or super crazy. It was a different time. See? And so I tell them that not to scare them or try to be sensational as if like I'm not trying to glamorize it. I'm just like, you got to understand sometimes why the people from my generation are the way they are, right? It was a different time. When you guys are growing up in peacetime, it's totally different. No drive-bys, none of that stuff. So I'm just like saying, just for context, that's all. And so for him to better understand his dad and all that, my brother's a great father, but he's very reserved. And I said, well, now you know why he's protective in a lot of ways and all that. So yeah, but don't be afraid. Your kids are ready to hear it. Like, parents always are like scared with the sex talk, but they don't realize if they don't talk about it, it actually, it doesn't help. It doesn't help.
Yeah.
So
your kids are going to find it somewhere else. They're going to learn about it somewhere else. They might as well learn about it at home.
It's like, listen, do you want them to learn from you or from Johnny Sins? Right? I mean, we have a very porn dependent culture too. We haven't even touched on that. Maybe that'll be in a future episode. But like, yeah, it's parents, be there. I get it. It's hard being a parent. It is freaking hard being a parent. So, but that's why you take on that challenge, man. So yeah, that's all I got for today, Melody. I think we had a good discussion. I mean, Gen Z is. This could be like a 3-parter, to be honest with you. I mean, I didn't even go over all of the raw stats for this generation. I think that'd be a sensory overload, to be honest. But I think people get the point. And if there are Gen Z people listening, listen, I hope your takeaway from this, from what Melody and I we're talking about, is that, yes, is it funny? Some of the shit you guys do? Sure. But is some of it warranted? Also, sure. And I'd like to think that we try to really give you guys support and acknowledge the challenges y'all got to go through, okay, that previous generations didn't. The challenges of my generation, the challenges of Melody's generation, the challenges of the boomers are not yours to live, but we get it. The problems we all created are yours to fix in a lot of ways. Yeah. We get it, okay? But, best we can do in our short podcast here was trying to suggest some things that may work in a way that's implemented that could work for you guys. And we'd love to hear from you if you have any feedback. If you think we stink, okay, say that too. If you thought we said something that could be helpful, let us know. Hit us up on our social media. We'll leave the links for a lot of what we referenced today, like NAMI, Kaiser. I know, Mel, you mentioned like the Calm app, Buddhify. We'll leave all the links below as well. So, Melody, thank you as always for joining today. Always good to have another clinician on here, so people don't just hear me drone away about mental health. So, everybody, have a good day and try not to get sick. Take care, everybody. Take care of your mentals, everybody. Bye-bye. Yes.